The red sun of Outpost 47 burned weakly over the dusty colony. Its light fell on rows of metal huts, flickering lamps, and the crowded market where humans and aliens traded what little they had. The air smelled of rust and smoke. Every sound echoed. Machines, footsteps, whispers of tired people trying to survive another day. Among them walked Lyra, an alien widow with pale blue skin and faint silver lines across her cheeks. Her thin cloak fluttered in the dry wind. In her arms she carried a small child who coughed softly against her shoulder. Her eyes searched the market stalls, filled with food she could no longer afford. Lyra had once lived happily with her mate, working together in the ore mines. But after the accident, the collapse that took his life, she was left with nothing but his old work badge and their child, Kiri. Since then, her credits had run dry. She had sold every small thing she owned, except a small charm Kiri had made from stone. Now, even buying bread was difficult. She stopped at a food stall where a human vendor with greasy hands stood behind a glowing counter. "How much for this packet?" she asked quietly. "3 credits, he said without looking at her. Her heart sank. She had only 1.5 left. Still, Kiri's weak voice whispered, "Mama, please. I'm hungry." She nodded slowly and handed her chipped ID card. The vendor slid it through the reader. A harsh beep filled the air and the screen flashed red. "Insufficient credits." People nearby turned their heads. A few humans smirked. A group of alien workers looked away, pretending not to see. The vendor crossed his arms. "No credits, no food." "Move aside." Lyra's throat tightened. "Wait, I'll bring the rest tomorrow." "Please, my child, and tomorrow?" The man laughed. "You aliens always say that. Go beg somewhere else." She lowered her head, feeling shame burn behind her eyes. She reached to put the food back on the counter. Her child's small fingers clutched her arm. She couldn't meet his gaze. Then a deep voice spoke from behind her. "Put it on my tab." The vendor frowned and turned. Standing there was a tall human miner in a worn brown jacket, his face rough with dust and exhaustion. His name was Evan Cross. Most people in the colony knew him as the man who worked double shifts, the one who never complained, the one who didn't talk much. The vendor blinked. "You sure?" "That's 3 credits." Evan nodded and handed over his chip. "Keep the change." Lyra turned around in surprise. "No, please, I can't accept this." "I'll return the food." Evan looked at her with calm eyes, not angry, not pitying, just kind. "You don't have to return anything. Just feed your child." Lyra stood frozen. No human had ever helped her before. The colony laws made it clear. Aliens were not equals. They worked in mines, cleaned streets, and bought food last. But this man didn't care about that. The vendor grumbled but scanned the payment anyway. "Fine. Here." He threw the food packet roughly on the counter. Evan picked it up and handed it gently to Lyra. She took it with shaking hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't even know your name." "Evan," he said simply. "Now go home before the patrol drones come by. They don't like unauthorized exchanges." She didn't understand. "Unauthorized?" he sighed. "Humans aren't supposed to give charity to aliens." "Stupid rule. Just go." Lyra's heart raced as she pulled her hood low and walked away through the crowd, clutching the food tight. Her child smiled faintly for the first time in days. "Mama?" "The nice man helped us." "Yes," she whispered. The nice man. But what she didn't see was the small security drone hovering above the market roof, its lens zooming in on Evan's face, recording everything. Its sensors blinked red as it transmitted the data to the colony authority. That evening, the market was quiet. Vendors closed their stalls early. Lyra and Kiri sat inside their small metal room, eating together. The walls were thin and the cold seeped through. Yet the food tasted like heaven. For the first time in weeks, her child fell asleep smiling. Lyra stared at the empty packet and whispered softly to herself, "I'll repay him someday." Across the colony, Evan sat in his tiny quarters. His hands were rough, his uniform torn. He stared at the same dull red sun sinking behind the mining towers. He had seen too much suffering, both human and alien. To him, kindness was not a rule. It was a choice, and that choice had just cost him more than he realized. A sharp knock came on his door. He turned. A man in a black coat entered without waiting for permission. It was Supervisor Ryle, head of colony security. Ryle's face was hard as stone. "Evan Cross?" "Yes, sir. I saw your payment record." You gave food to an alien. You know that violates Trade Regulation 12B. Evan didn't flinch. So she was hungry. Ryle's jaw tightened. You think your feelings matter here? You work for the company. You follow orders, not emotions. I follow what's right, Evan said quietly. Ryle stepped closer. Do you want to lose your job? Your housing permit? Or maybe a week in the stockade? Evan's voice stayed calm. If kindness is a crime, then maybe your laws are the problem. Ryle stared at him for a long time, then smiled coldly. We'll see how long that courage lasts. He turned and left, slamming the door. Evan sat down again. Outside, the wind howled through the metal streets. He looked at the small picture on his desk, an old photo of his family long gone after a mining accident years ago. Maybe that was why he had helped the alien woman, maybe because he knew the pain of losing everything. The next morning, rumors spread across the colony. Did you hear? A human paid for an alien's food. They say security's watching him now. Maybe he's one of those reformers, crazy people who think aliens are equal, and ignored the whispers as he walked to the mine. But his co-workers avoided him. A few gave him hard looks. One spat near his boots. Traitor. By evening, when he returned home, he noticed something strange. A folded piece of paper under his door. Paper was rare in the colony. He opened it carefully. Inside was a small note written in shaky letters. Thank you. If you ever need help, find me near the old water station. Lyra. He smiled faintly and slipped it into his pocket. The world still had small pieces of goodness left. But above the colony, high inside the company tower, Commander Ryle watched the market footage again. He paused at the frame showing Evan handing over the food packet. A smirk crossed his lips. So, you want to play the hero miner? Fine. Let's see what happens to heroes here. He clicked a button, and the screen filled with the word tracking authorized. Outside, the same drone that had recorded the scene rose silently into the red sky, scanning for Evan Cross's signal. The desert wind blew harder that night, carrying the scent of dust and danger. The next morning, the red sun rose again over Outpost 47. Its weak light touched the metal streets and gray towers, making everything look tired and old. The colony woke slowly. Machines started, miners walked to work, and drones floated through the air like silent ghosts. Evan Cross walked through the narrow alley that led to the ore foundry. His boots crunched on the metal floor. Around him, people whispered. He could feel their eyes on his back. Some humans looked away when he passed. Others stared at him with anger. Everyone had heard about the incident in the market. A human helping an alien, unforgivable in the company's eyes. When he reached the work gate, the guard scanned his ID and frowned. You better watch yourself, Cross, the man said in a low voice. Security's been asking questions. Evan nodded. Let them ask. Inside the foundry, machines roared and sparks flew. The air was thick with heat and dust. Evan picked up his tools and went to work, but his mind wasn't there. He kept thinking about Lyra and her little child. Did they eat again? Were they safe? Hours passed. When the shift ended, most workers rushed out quickly, leaving him alone by the furnaces. He wiped sweat from his face and stepped outside. The streets were quieter now. A storm was coming. The wind carried fine red dust across the sky. As he walked home, a voice came from the shadows. You think you can play hero miner? Evan turned sharply. A man stepped out from the darkness wearing a black uniform with silver stripes. It was Commander Ryle, head of colony security. His eyes were sharp, cold, and full of control. Evan didn't speak. He stood tall and waited. Ryle smiled without warmth. Do you know how many laws you broke yesterday? Feeding an unregistered alien, performing a non-authorized transaction. That's enough to suspend your permit. I fed a starving child, Evan said calmly. That shouldn't be a crime. Ryle's smile faded. This colony works because humans obey the company. You start giving away food and others start asking questions. Questions lead to problems. You understand? Evan stayed silent. Ryle stepped closer until their faces were only inches apart. You've got one warning, Cross. Stay away from that alien. Next time I won't just suspend you, I'll make you disappear into the mines forever. He turned and walked away, boots echoing on the metal ground. Evan stood still for a long moment, fists clenched, anger burning quietly inside. That night, the colony lights flickered. Rain began to fall, thin red rain mixed with dust from the upper atmosphere. Lyra sat inside her small shelter, holding her child close. The roof leaked and the air was cold. Kiri slept, but Lyra couldn't. She kept remembering Evan's face, the way he had smiled gently as if kindness still existed. A sudden knock made her jump. Her heart raced. She peered through a crack in the metal door. A young alien girl stood there, trembling. "Lyra," she whispered. "You must leave. The humans are watching your house." "What?" "2 patrols came by asking for you. They say a human broke the law for an alien woman with a child." "They'll come again." Lyra felt her blood freeze. "Oh no, they'll arrest him too." The girl shook her head. "Go, hide near the old water station. It's abandoned." "No one goes there now." Lyra grabbed her few belongings and woke her child. "Kiri, we have to go." The little one rubbed his eyes. "Is the bad man coming?" "No, love," she whispered, forcing a smile. "We're just going somewhere safe." They slipped out into the rain, cloaked and quiet. The streets were almost empty, only drones gliding by with red scanning lights. Lyra moved through alleys, staying in the shadows. Meanwhile, Evan was sitting in the mess hall eating cold rations when he heard shouting outside. He stepped to the window. 3 armored patrols were moving down the street, heading toward the alien district. His stomach tightened. "Lyra." Without thinking, he grabbed his coat and ran out. The air was sharp with rain and smoke. He followed the sound of engines until he saw the patrol trucks. They had already reached the block where Lyra lived. Lights flashed and a voice shouted through a speaker, "Open the door." By order of the company, Lyra's door burst open. She ran out holding Kiri. The patrol aimed stun rifles at her. Evan's body moved before his mind did. He sprinted forward. "Stop!" he yelled. The soldiers turned, surprised. One shouted, "Stand down, miner!" Evan ignored them. "She's under my protection." "What?" The lead officer lowered his gun slightly. "I said she's with me." Evan grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her behind him. "You'll have to go through me first." The soldiers hesitated. One of them pressed a comm button on his helmet. A moment later, Ryle's cold voice crackled through. "Let them go. For now." The soldiers lowered their weapons and stepped back. "Orders from command," one muttered. Evan looked confused. He expected arrest, not mercy. But Ryle was watching everything through his drone feed, smirking. Let's see how far the hero runs when the whole colony turns on him. Evan led Lyra away from the street into a narrow alley. They stopped behind a cargo crate, both breathing hard. "You shouldn't have done that," Lyra said. "Now they'll come for you too." He shook his head. They were already coming. "I couldn't just watch." Her eyes glistened. "You'll lose everything." "I already lost everything once," he said quietly. "Maybe helping you is the only thing that makes sense anymore." For the next few days, they hid. Evan used his mining access card to enter old tunnels where no one went anymore. Lyra tried to keep her child quiet. They survived on ration bars and recycled water. Sometimes they heard drones outside scanning. Sometimes distant explosions from the mining fields. One evening, Lyra asked softly, "Why did you help me, Evan?" He looked at her across the dim light of a small lamp. "Because I saw someone who needed help and everyone else looked away. When my wife died in the mines, no one helped me either. Maybe I just didn't want to be like them." Lyra lowered her gaze. "Your wife." "I'm sorry," he smiled faintly. "Don't be. You and Kiri remind me that there's still life left in this place." A silence fell between them. Peaceful, almost warm even in the cold darkness, but far away. Inside the colony tower, Ryle watched their heat signatures on his holomap. He leaned back in his chair, lighting a thin cigarette. "Let them hide," he muttered. "Every drone, every camera, keep them marked. When the time comes, we'll make an example." 2 nights later, Evan decided to go back to the colony briefly to get supplies. He left Lyra and Kiri in the tunnel with a promise. "I'll return before dawn." The streets were quiet when he reached the outer market. Most stalls were closed, but one human vendor, the same man from before, was still there. When Evan approached, the vendor sneered. "Back for more alien charity?" "I just need food," Evan said, placing some credits on the counter. The man stared at him. "You're a fool, Cross. You've started something you can't stop. People are talking. Humans helping aliens, aliens talking about rebellion. The company won't let that stand." Evan picked up the food pack and said, "Maybe it's time someone stood up." As he turned to leave, the vendor called out, "They're going to crush you both. You can't fight them." Evan didn't answer. He walked into the storm, his coat flapping like a shadow against the red wind. Back in the tunnels, Lyra waited anxiously. Every small sound made her heart jump. Hours passed. Finally, she heard footsteps. Evan appeared soaked and tired, but smiling faintly. He handed her the food pack. See? Told you I'd come back, she smiled in relief. You shouldn't risk so much for us, he shrugged. Some risks are worth taking. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky. In the distance, dozens of drones lifted off together, moving toward the wastelands. Ryle's voice echoed in his control room. Activate the hunt. Bring them back alive if possible. The desert around Outpost 47 was silent. The red sun was hidden behind thick gray clouds and a dry wind blew over the rocks. In an old broken comm tower, Evan, Lyra, and her child Kiri hid from the company drones that searched the wastelands. The tower groaned with every gust of wind. Inside, a small fire flickered, weak but warm. Kiri slept wrapped in Evan's old jacket. Lyra watched the boy with tired eyes, her hands shaking slightly. They had been hiding for 5 days now. Food was almost gone, water even less. Evan sat near the fire, cleaning his old mining tool. If they find us, this might be all I can fight with, he said quietly. Lyra frowned. You shouldn't have to fight. You helped us because you have a good heart. That shouldn't be punished, he smiled faintly. Maybe kindness is the only rebellion left. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the wind filled the silence. The hunt far away, in the command tower of the colony, Commander Ryle watched the drone screens. Found them, one officer reported. A faint heat signature glowed on the edge of the desert. Ryle smiled coldly. Send a squad. Surround the area. I want the human alive. Within minutes, armored transports moved across the sand. Drones flew above them like angry insects, flashing red lights in the dust storm. Back in the comm tower, Lyra felt something strange. A vibration in the ground. She froze. Evan. He stood listening. Engines. They found us. He grabbed Kiri and whispered, Take him to the lower floor. Stay quiet. No matter what happens, Lyra shook her head. I won't leave you. You have to, he said firmly. If they take me, you run. Promise me, she didn't answer. She just stared at him, her eyes full of tears. Promise me, he said again. Finally, she nodded. Evan stepped out of the tower into the storm. Red dust stung his face. The hum of drones grew louder. He could see the lights of armored vehicles in the distance. Evan Cross, a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. By order of the company, surrender now. He shouted back, You'll have to take me by force. The stand Ryle himself stepped out of one of the transports covered in black armor. You had your warning, he said, walking closer. You could have kept your job, your life, but you chose an alien over your own kind. Evan laughed bitterly. My own kind? You think kindness has a species? You've forgotten what it means to be human. Ryle raised his weapon, and you'll die for that lesson. Before he could fire, a blast of lightning hit the ground nearby. The storm howled louder, shaking the sky. Evan used the moment to rush forward, slamming his mining tool into the sand and knocking Ryle's gun aside. They struggled in the dust. Ryle punched him hard, but Evan didn't fall. He fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. Behind them, Lyra appeared at the tower's entrance, clutching Kiri close. She screamed, Stop this! Ryle turned his head slightly, just long enough for Evan to grab the fallen gun. He pointed it straight at Ryle. It's over. Leave us, Ryle smirked. Even if you kill me, the company will send more. You can't fight them all. Evan hesitated. He knew it was true. But then a new sound rose from the distance, hundreds of voices shouting. He turned to see figures emerging from the storm. Miners, vendors, workers, both human and alien. They were marching together toward the tower. One of them shouted, Leave him alone. Another yelled, We're done following your laws. Evan blinked in disbelief. Ryle looked around in panic. What is this? The uprising, someone had leaked the drone footage. The moment Evan bought food for Lyra. It had spread through every colony screen. People who had once looked away now remembered what decency felt like. They were tired of fear, tired of rules that punished kindness. The crowd grew around the tower, humans standing beside aliens. A human woman stepped forward. We watched him save a starving child. And you call that a crime? Ryle shouted, Disperse! This is an illegal gathering. But no one moved. Evan stepped beside Lyra, breathing hard. He looked at the people, faces dirty and tired but eyes bright with courage. "You don't need to fight for me," he said loudly. "Fight for what's right. For each other." Ryle aimed his weapon again. "Enough!" A miner threw a rock that hit Ryle's armor. Then another. In seconds, the air filled with shouting and defiance. Ryle's troops backed away. One of them muttered, "Sir, there are too many." Ryle cursed. "Fall back! Fall back now!" The soldiers retreated toward the transports as the people surged forward cheering. Someone tore down the company's banner from a pole and replaced it with a piece of cloth half blue, half brown, alien and human colors together. It fluttered in the red wind. After the storm hours later, quiet returned. The storm had passed, and so had the soldiers. The market of Outpost 47 was full again, but this time something was different. Humans and aliens stood side by side, trading without fear. Evan sat on a crate near the food stall, his arm bandaged. Lyra and Kiri sat beside him. The same vendor who had once refused her now approached nervously. Sorry for before," he muttered. "Here, on the house." He handed Kiri a small fruit. Evan smiled. "Looks like things are changing." Lyra nodded softly. "Because one human refused to look away." He looked at her. "Because one alien believed humans could still be good." For the first time they both laughed. A small, honest laugh under the pale red sky. A new dawn weeks passed. The company's control weakened. Rumors spread across other colonies about a human miner who defied the rules and an alien widow who stood beside him. People called it the Kindness Rebellion. Evan still worked in the mines, but now he wasn't alone. Humans and aliens shared shifts, shared meals, and even sang old Earth songs together in the tunnels. The guards who once watched them now worked among them. The old fear was gone. One morning, Lyra came to the market early. The red sun rose higher, warmer than before. She placed a small packet of food on the counter and turned to Evan. "Today it's my turn to pay." He chuckled. "You sure you can afford that?" She smiled. "I can afford to be kind." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then that's the richest thing anyone can be." They shared the food with others sitting nearby, children, workers, strangers. The same stall that once divided species now united them. Around them, laughter and conversation filled the air. For the first time, Outpost 47 felt alive. Final scene as night came. Evan climbed a small hill beyond the colony. From there, he could see lights across the settlement. Hundreds of small fires glowing in the dark. Every light was a sign of people eating together, humans and aliens both. Lyra joined him quietly. "Do you ever think your kindness was worth the pain?" He looked at the stars. "Pain passes. Kindness lasts," she smiled. "My people will tell stories about you, you know." "The human who gave food to a widow." Evan shook his head. "Then tell them it wasn't just one human. Tell them everyone learned to share after that." Below them, the colony lights flickered brighter, like stars rising from the ground. The red sun dipped beneath the horizon, and for the first time, the night over Outpost 47 felt peaceful. A new world had begun, not built by laws or weapons, but by a single act of compassion.